When Jesus started preaching in Palestine, one thing horrified him and really he had to fight against was the way the religious leaders were misleading people, and very often by insisting on small details of practice which had become a custom and forgetting the main point of it. I'm afraid it's something which happens in almost every religion from time to time. People were looking towards their religious leaders and they were really being misled. And it was fastening on silly details because they wanted people to do things the way they did it. It would start often with a very good custom. Wash your hands before meals. How often did your mother tell you that? It's good. And so, but then they worked it out. What do you mean by your hand? Is it just that, or no, that much? So in the end, you're supposed to wash your right up to the elbows. Well, there's loads of things like that. Started as something really good. I remember a priest once who had a beautiful black Labrador dog that followed him everywhere. And unfortunately, when he went to say Mass, when he went to the altar, the dog would follow him. So they thought, people didn't like that. So what they did, they got a basket and they put it by the sacristy door where the dog could see him. And before Mass, they put the dog in the basket, and just to stop him wandering, they hooked his lead on the hook behind, and the dog sat there. And that became a thing they did every day. The sacristan would arrange the altar, everything ready, put the dog in the basket, hook it up, and then say to the priest, everything ready, and off we go. Then eventually, I'm afraid, that old priest died. Another priest came, but they still tied up the dog. They were always doing that. And then eventually the old dog died. And then they had a big debate about how they must buy another dog for the ceremony of tying up the dog before Mass. Should it be a Labrador or not? And this is what happened with so many things. And there was one law, not to work on the Sabbath. So everybody would be able to rest, animals, slaves, everybody. You don't work and you give your time to God and relax. Well, what's working? Oh, well, James and John and Peter were fishermen, so they didn't go out fishing on the Sabbath. If somebody turned up with his rod and line on a holiday, oh no, that's working. Or if somebody was a farmer, then on the Sabbath he wouldn't plough or harvest corn. That's working. So if a man is walking through a cornfield and grabs a handful of wheat, an ear, and rubs it and blows off the chaff, you know how they do it. And that's what the apostles did. Working. The whole point, it was gone. But the difficulty was that covered what was more important. Wordsworth has a lovely expression, what he calls the dust of custom. If you've got a beautiful piece of furniture covered with dust, you don't see the beauty. And often the custom or the way we do it can take over from what we're really doing. When I was a child, in those days we always had Mass in Latin, and it was beautiful. But I remember one man in our parish, he was very good, he was very active, and really helped everybody. He did a lot of work for the church. And recently I said to my sister, what happened to so-and-so? And she said, oh, when Mass went into English, he never went to church again. The Latin was beautiful, but that wasn't the point of what we were doing. But that's what took over. And I'm afraid again and again, things in our own religion like that. One good sign is if you find you're criticizing the way other people are doing it. If you find you're criticizing, then it looks as though you're fastening on a way of doing it and not what is really important. And if anyone says, oh, that's a sin, or that's a sin, well, now, is it helping you to love other people? When I was a boy, we were told it's a sin to miss Mass on Sunday. And recently somebody said to me, Father, is it a sin to miss Mass on Sunday? And I found myself hesitating. And then I thought, I don't go to Mass so that I won't have a sin on my soul. Because one lady said to me, I didn't go to Mass, but when I thought how good our Lord had been to me, and all the blessings he's given me, and the way he loved me, oh, I should have gone to Mass. There, she's not thinking about whether she's going to be good or not, but looking outwards to the good of other people. That is a sign of our conscience. But if you're just trying to say, I want to become a holier person, a better person, oh no, that is going to wither or make me less a person. And sometimes it needs working out a bit. A lady came to me and said, my daughter's going off to college soon and she wants to live with her boyfriend. So I said, what's wrong with that? She said, but sex against marriage is a sin, before marriage is a sin. I said, yeah, but why? She said, it's against the 10 Commandments. But why is it in the 10 Commandments? What is any harm in it? And yes, when I look at it, if she settles in with a boyfriend and makes love, and then they get fed up with each other, they go on to another one, and then another one, each time thinking this is the real thing, then she won't be able to really show love in the same way when the moment comes when she could really have devoted her life to the one person. That wonderful act, a sexual act, given because I want to get pleasure at the moment, doesn't lead on to a deeper love that she could really give to someone. Not making herself a better person, but simply more loving so that other people can benefit. This is, we try to see in ourselves we could do it, but I'm afraid with the whole church this is also the thing. The church wanting to develop itself, our reputation, get known, be known as really leaders. That's looking at within ourselves. And that is really what happened when there was the abuse scandal across the church. The abuse scandal was terrible, but what was worse, the church's main aim then was to defend itself and not get a bad reputation. That was the horror. That was the terrible thing, and that was what Christ was crying out against with the Pharisees. We need to look outwards, and if the church is trying to look in on itself, then it will wither away. I knew one parish, a small church, but the liturgy was beautiful. The singing and the way they did everything. People came from miles around. It was wonderful. And if you've been there, you'd want to come to it. The way Mass was offered was beautiful. And that parish, just a few years ago, decided to put on a camp, not just for the children of the parish, but other children, no particular religion, who lived nearby. One man told me he went out looking at the area they were thinking of, and to his amazement and rather horror, he said, I'd often driven through there, but I'd never walked through or looked at it. At first I saw a girl, maybe about 15-year-old, holding her baby, and her friend about the same age who was obviously pregnant. The kids were running wild. There seemed to be no men about, except further on they were just hanging around, chatting. Women were trying to cope with the children. Oh, what need they had. And anyway, they decided to set up this camp. Not overnight, but the children would come to an area, a land which they had, and they really put themselves there, and the children were delighted. Nobody had ever bothered with them during school holidays before. It was chaotic, but it was wonderful. The children were so picked up, and they kept coming to the church. They're a bit wild, and I'm afraid their language isn't the sort of language we like our children to use. And so very quickly people were saying, if they're going to keep coming round, we're going to lose numbers, you know. People will stop coming to our church, they'll go elsewhere if that's what we've got. What are we looking for? The church is made to go to other people. But in every religion there's a temptation to turn back within ourselves. And that is what Jesus was criticizing. That is what Jesus found was misleading and harming the people. And our attitude to it, you know, I think is very much like Judas and St. Peter. Do you remember, at the Last Supper, the night before Jesus died, he warned Peter and he warned Judas that they were going to betray him. And they both betrayed him. And they both wept bitterly afterwards. So why is Judas a traitor and Peter a great saint? It wasn't for what they did then, it was their sorrow afterwards. Why did they weep? And I think it was because Judas wept when he saw how low he had fallen, how rotten he was. He was disappointed in himself. Peter wept because he'd hurt Jesus. There's a phrase in the Gospel during the Passion, which we don't know how it really fitted in, when it said, and Jesus turned and looked at Peter. Perhaps it was just in Peter's heart. Peter was heartbroken and wept that he'd hurt Christ, not that he was just a rotten person himself for betraying, not self-pitying. We must be turning out to others, and if we're trying to turn in on ourselves just to become better people, then that is what Christ found was misleading. The dust of custom can cover what is really most beautiful. When you say a thing is right or wrong, look at what we're really talking about. The Mass is something most beautiful, and that isn't because of the good singing, that helps, or the good action. It is Christ being offered to the Father. Let's pray that we will really see what the Lord is offering us. Let us see that if there are rules and regulations in our religion, that they're not covering what is fundamental. I can see what's wrong with other people, and in talking about it today, I've been thinking, and where am I doing the same thing? I'm going to have to look at myself to see where I'm going wrong. Pray for the